from my treadmill, as I do every month, to answer any questions you may have. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world, so busy folks like you don't have to. I then compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings into new videos and articles I upload nearly every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorships, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved with evidence-based nutrition. All right, first question on the board is from Bella. Bella says, oh, here, let me enlarge that so I can read it. Bella says, I put button mushrooms gill side up on the sun for half an hour to increase vitamin D production. Then I slice them, put them in the microwave for 2 minutes. Is that okay? It's certainly okay. However, you're not going to reach my recommended 2,000 international units a day of a D3 every day. In fact, it's D2, and you're not going to reach that level. So if you're getting inadequate sunshine, if you get enough sun to make enough vitamin D, it doesn't matter. But if you're getting inadequate sunshine, I'm afraid mushrooms ain't gonna be sufficient. Though better than nothing. Next up, where did we just go? Here we go. Next up is from Heroes Lost 24 fan. Do free radicals from meat, dairy, protein, cholesterol, and food oils can induce motor neuron disease? I think the only videos I have that deal with kind of motor neurons, of course, I have lots of videos on Parkinson's disease, also a few videos on essential tremor. But that's, I think, really it. And in terms of the latter, it's not the free radicals, but the beta-carboline alkaloids, which are types of heterocyclic amines formed when the creatine in mussels, particularly chicken, undergo a chemical reaction particularly in high dry heat circumstances like grilling and broiling or baking, and form these heterocyclic amines, which are tied to the formation to the development of essential tremor. Okay, next up, Mark says, are there any herb spice combinations that conflict with each other? I assume from kind of a medicinal standpoint, herb spice. So there's the, we know about the kind of black pepper and turmeric, boosting the bioavailability of turmeric with black pepper. People, I don't think, really understand what's going on there. The black pepper, the piperine in black pepper is actually suppressing your body's detoxification system, decreasing your ability of your liver to detoxify chemicals coming into the body, and so allows higher levels of turmeric to build up in your blood, which would normally be cleared out by your liver. Now, if that's the goal, if you want higher levels of turmeric compounds in your blood, well, that'll do it. But you can imagine how there are circumstances where you'd want your liver to be detoxifying some things, but I can't think of any combo that kind of is antagonistic off the top of my head. Next question. Justin says, would I advise taking Brazil nuts once a month if adequate amounts of selenium is attained through diet? You're taking 4 Brazil nuts a month is not going to satisfy your selenium requirements if you're not getting selenium in any other way. There's a study that suggested that 4 Brazil nuts once a month significantly decreases cholesterol levels within, I believe, 9 hours, and they kind of stay down for that month. And so, as a suggested, why not give it a try? Unfortunately, people took that advice and said, hey, if 4 once a month is good, how about 4 a day? Which would be way too much selenium. Selenium has been termed an essential poison. I mean, we actually do need selenium, but there's a very narrow therapeutic window. And even a single high selenium Brazil nut a day is pro-inflammatory. Actually increases inflammation within the body. So you can absolutely overdo it. 4 once a month shouldn't be a problem. But not for, but you would do it in turn for cholesterol reduction. Okay, next up, Mark asks, does cooking with vinegar lessen the nutritional benefits? No, the nutritional benefits are from the acetic acid, and you can, and the acetic acid is not destroyed by cooking. Good question. Nancy says, do canned mushrooms have any health benefits, or is cooking raw mushrooms the only way to go? The only problem with two problems with canned vegetables. One, they taste gross. And two, the reason because they taste gross, what do? They add salt to make them taste less gross. And so typically canned vegetables are loaded with salt. But if you can find canned mushrooms without salt, then go for it if you don't mind the taste or the texture. I find if you're like, well, I don't have access to fresh mushrooms, get dried mushrooms. You get all sorts of crazy dried mushrooms. I just got a big bag of porcinis, my favorite mushroom taste-wise. Oh, and also one of the highest sources of ergothioneine, which is a so-called longevity vitamin. I talk a lot about in the How Not to Age book coming up. So you may indeed get some porcinis too, and they're delicious. Make it a thick, rich, rich broth with them. It can be used for sautéing, all sorts of wonderful things. Anyway, so dried mushrooms keep really well, and you can get all sorts of different kinds of dried mushrooms. And when I talk about cooking, the importance of cooking raw mushrooms, we're just talking about agaricus mushrooms. There's some called agarotine found in that family, and so that's white mushrooms, cremini mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, which are all just the exact same mushroom, just at different stages of development. And that mushroom does have something that you really want to cook out. But oyster mushrooms, you can eat raw. In fact, you can make oyster mushrooms. In fact, I do make oyster mushrooms. I started out with those kits, just add water, and they have these beautiful blooms of oyster mushrooms. So cool. Then I'm like, whoa, I got to get serious with this. And then started actually getting spores and crumbling up and have a little bed outside under a tree and water it. And we get these massive mushrooms like this big. Anyway, so you can make your own mushrooms. And so, yeah, you can eat raw oyster mushrooms. The only other two I'd be worried about making sure you're cooking really well, shiitake mushrooms, not because of agarotine, but because you can get shiitake this flagellate dermatitis, this whip-like rash, up to 10 days after you eat the undercooked shiitake, so you don't make the connection. And then morel mushrooms have to be cooked and shouldn't be eaten with alcohol. And even if they are cooked, don't eat too many of them. Anyway, that's a quick little mushroom bit. All right, next up, Gianni says, I am on Warfarin. I've been diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome. For patients on Coumadin, can diet in the blood efficiently enough to remove the need for taking the drugs. For example, turmeric or some other kind of anti-inflammatories. And the answer is no. The gold standard for antiphospholipid syndrome, which is an autoimmune condition, which causes your blood to clot anywhere in the body. And basically the gold standard of treatment is lifelong anticoagulation using these so-called vitamin K antagonists like Coumadin. And so, yeah, you are going to be on this drug for the rest of your life, which is good news because it significantly decreases your risk of having a clotting event, which can be really quite serious. Of course, we have to worry about, because it works by blocking vitamin K in the body, which helps your body clot blood. And so if all of a sudden you ate a whole bunch of vitamin K out of nowhere, like eating a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, then you'd actually you'd replenish your body's supply that's being blocked by the drug, and you could become clotting again. So you have to titrate your drug intake with your greens intake, and then have a steady greens intake. And so, of course, you want it really high. It's not saying don't eat greens. The reason doctors say don't eat greens is because they assume you eat no greens. So they're like, don't all of a sudden eat some greens. But what we should be doing is titrate up the levels of the drug to so you have lots of greens intake, and you maintain that greens intake with the intake of the drug that adequately thins your blood. Okay, next up. Shayla says, any advice in dealing with anxiety and panic disorder? I do have a few videos. So, for example, there's the University of Arizona video. A study found that those randomized to egg-free vegetarian diets had significantly, within 2 weeks, significantly improved mood and decreased anxiety. This was people who don't have an anxiety disorder. These are just normal people who just they're about anxiety levels and mood changing. The only anxiety disorder video I think I have talked about butternut squash seed kernels, because they're high in tryptophan, relatively low in protein, and can get these neurotransmitter precursor into the brain. And I talk about that. So if you just type in butternut squash into nutritionfast.org, that should pop right up. Okay. Hubert says, if someone's bitten by a tick, it's not possible to pull it out, so that it was no longer visible. The tick was invisible in the body. How do you eliminate from the body by natural means? Ticks don't disappear in the body; they fall off or are dug out. So bitten by the tick, yeah. So I mean, if you are in an area with Lyme disease and you don't believe you got the tick off within like a 24-hour period, you can talk to your doctor about some like doxycycline or something, which can be taken up, I think, up to like a week after the tick bite to decrease your risk of getting Lyme disease. But there is not like a tick burrowing inside your body. That is not what ticks do, as far as I know. Okay, Tina says, I would like to know if Indian spices sautéed in oil, do they lose their antioxidant properties? No. In fact, well, I mean, at that kind of heat, they may lose some of their antioxidant properties, but the fat may help absorb some of the components that are fat soluble. And so rather than sauteing in oil, rather than cooking with oil, which can create some toxic byproducts, let us add whole food sources of fat, like nuts, seeds. So you can make like a cashew cream, or make that Indian curry or whatever, or add some pumpkin seeds on top, or some avocado or something like that. That'd be the best way to get the best of both worlds in terms of absorption. Okay, Hubert is back. How do I treat psychosis? Person with psychosis takes, you're not taking 500 milligrams, presumably micrograms of vitamin B12 daily. It's a plant-based diet. So psychosis can cause a variety of things, but classic causes schizophrenia, but lots of things can cause you to be psychotic and be side effects of various drugs, both illicit and otherwise. And so treat the cause is really what you need to do, and treat the cause. Find out what work with your doctor to find out what's causing the psychosis, and then try to remove the cause. Larry says in a video, said diets high in sodium associated with increased risk of stroke. How high is high? High is over 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. Ideally, we'd stay below that. That's the American Heart Association recommendation. And diets high in sodium aren't just associated with increased risk of strokes, but all sorts of things. High blood pressure, kidney damage, autoimmune disease, you name it. We really need to cut down on our salt intake, which is mostly processed foods. About 70% of sodium intake is from processed foods. So, eliminating, not only just not adding, salt in the kitchen or dinner table, but, anything kind of in a box or a bag or a can, you really need to check to make sure that it has less sodium than there are calories per serving. And then at least it would get people under like 2,000 a day or 2,300 a day, which is better than nothing. All right. This is Offer Street. Mostly whole food, plant-based, with a whole spelled with an H, several years. But my LDL remains high, around Okay. Doesn't mean I can eat whatever I want. So the average LDL of someone eliminating from their diets the three things that increase your cholesterol, and that is trans fats, saturated fats, and dietary cholesterol. By eating a whole food plant-based diet, average LDL comes to about 68, which is good for primary prevention. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's a bell curve such that half the people do even better than that, eating the same diet, and the other half do worse than that, thanks primarily to genetic predisposition. And so if you just have run high, well, then it's even more important to eat extraordinarily healthy. And if removing those three dietary components from your diet or minimizing them as much as possible isn't sufficient, then you move on to adding healthy foods to your diet that pull cholesterol from the body. So I'm thinking about Dr. David Jenkins' portfolio diet, adding things like soluble fiber-rich foods like, slimy foods, okra, oatmeal, eggplant, adding nuts, things like that, pulling your cholesterol down from different ways. So you have this kind of portfolio effect to lower your cholesterol beyond just being a plant-based diet. Okay, next up, Plants Only Muncher asks, do the oxalates in spinach should be eaten alone? Should it be eaten alone with other leafy greens or not eaten at all? No, you just have to moderate your intake. So for the three greens that are high in oxalates, spinach, Swiss chard, and beet greens, you should not eat cups a day. Now, if you have a history of oxalate kidney stones, I would move away from high oxalate foods altogether. But for someone who isn't, who doesn't have that history, you just don't want to eat cups a day of spinach. You do want to eat cups a day of greens, though. So then you'd diversify your greens intake to get some of the lower oxalate greens like kale and collards and bok choy, all those other wonderful greens on the list. So spinach, super healthy food, but stingy with its calcium, and number one source of oxalates intake in the country. And so if you get too much, you can increase your risk of kidney stones, which are ouchy. Man of Constant Sorrow asks, a doctor claims that B12 causes cancer. Oh, any evidence of this, or is this BS? I actually have a video about it. I just put in B12 cancer, pop right up. And all will be revealed. All right, Shayla Blair, trying to wean off an SSRI for anxiety because side effects are so disruptive. That's very common. And alternatives, a way to lower. We talked about anxiety earlier on the Q&A. What's up with plants? Says thank you. Oh, that's nice. You're welcome. Any opinion? On the Mark II study, specifically intensity and duration of exercise. And not duration of exercise, causing coronary atherosclerosis. I will look into it. I have not. I'm sure it's in my inbox. We have all sorts of wonderful volunteer article retrievers that scour the literature for good stuff for me to sit down and write new videos on, but have been in book mode, and so I've yet to do the next big batch of nutrition facts videos, but we'll certainly check that study out. Next up, here we go. Man of Constant Sorrow is back. No wonder you're in constant sorrow if you have all these medical issues. Any advice on how to treat hiatal hernia? So hiatal hernia can be considered a pressure disease, similar to hemorrhoids, diverticulosis, and varicose veins, where excessive straining at stool. In fact, any straining at stool is excessive. Bowel movement should be effortless because you're eating so much fiber. We evolved to eat over 100 grams of fiber a day. Now, 97% of Americans don't even reach the recommended minimum daily intake, which is depends on your caloric intake, but it's under 30 grams. When you strain the stool, you can actually push part of your stomach up into your chest cavity. and that can cause contribute to acid reflux, all sorts of things. So critically important to eat fiber-rich foods to prevent outpouchings from your intestine, like diverticulosis or veins around the end of your digestive tract for hemorrhoids, etc. Okay, next up, I think I actually missed the flu because they go so quickly, but Tricia. Tricia's sister has severe allergies. Oh, it's interesting. Allergies to dietary nickel. And she reacts. So, whole grains filled with a lot of minerals. I'm not surprised they have nickel in them. And she's severely obese. What can you do? Eat low nickel foods. I don't think I could even name which. So, look, you don't have to eat whole grains. Whole grains are little seeds. What is a whole grain? It's a little plant. Stick it in the ground. And makes a new plant. So botanically, seeds, nuts, beans, the whole grains are all kind of the same thing. You put it in the ground, the plant pops up. So they have kind of similar nutritional aspects. And so, if for whatever reason you can't do whole grains, you could do other so-called seeds and get the same kind of nutritional benefits. Next up. Noriko. I've been making organic bone broth for years for joints, special needs. Also faithfully using multi-collagen. I don't know what that means. For gut health, joints, and skin. Is it terrible? What do you recommend? I just did a webinar on collagen. Those videos will be up soon on nutritionfacts.org. In fact, a bunch of our webinars are now you can just the kind of archived ones you can watch. I don't know if that one is or not. So I talk about how I talk about the kind of controversy surrounding eating collagen for both skin aging and for joint health, and basically kind of the bottom line. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me turn my do not disturb on. I should have done that before. The bottom line is that instead of eating collagen, we should boost our own endogenous production. And that was with a number of collagen-promoting foods and nutrients. So 95 milligrams of vitamin C a day, which is actually more than the recommended daily allowance, was one of the recommendations. So, vitamin C-rich foods are like citrus and broccoli and bell peppers and tropical fruits. And there were some other foods that can boost collagen intake for those who want to, for those who think it might help. Did I just lose that? Kim says, Partners is a 27-year-old male, presumably, diagnosed diverticulitis. Here we go. We were just talking. Oh, and because he's eating very high fiber, exercise, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so fiber is the critical point. And so diverticulitis is an inflammation of one of the diverticulosis outpouchings from the diet. And so, unfortunately, they don't go away. So if, in populations that eat whole food plant-based diets, there's essentially no diverticulitis found or diverticulosis found, but it's very possible if this is relatively recent conversion that for the first, 20 years of this person's life, was straining its stool, blowing out pieces of their colon, and then only recently, for whatever reason, did one get inflamed. So better to prevent in the first place, but certainly, there's all you can do now is prevent further a diverticuli from forming, and you do that by maintaining your high fiber diet. Okay, Larry says, do crackers, bread, potato chips contain resistant starch even though they've only been cooled to room temperature rather than refrigerated? No, we want to refrigerate. So for example, you bake a potato, put it in the fridge, and then you warm it back up, and you have that form the formation of extra resistant starch, but it doesn't happen at room temperature. And even in the fridge, we're talking, I think it was like 2% formation, 2% of the starch kind of turns into resistant starch. meaning that it's resistant to digestion from our small intestine enzyme, so it makes it down to large intestine. Large intestine acts as a prebiotic to feed our good bacteria. But something like a legume, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils, they start out like 3-4%. So if you really want to feed your gut bugs, whole grains legumes are the way to go. But yeah, you can get a little extra resistant starch. But if you're going to eat potatoes, having like potato salad would be better, just because it's cold. And actually, the vinegar in the potato salad also reduces the glycemic impact, which would be good as well. Okay, next up, astaxanthin, found almost entirely in seafood and algae. Sounds like important antioxidant. How do vegans get enough? It's unnecessary to get any in one's diet. If you are eating a plant-based diet, or if eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're getting on average, 50 times more antioxidants than someone centering their diets around either processed junk or animal foods. And so there's nothing particular about that particular antibiotic that we need to get into our diet. Diagnosed pre-diabetic. I'm so sorry to hear. H1 hemoglobin A1C 6.1. Triglycerides too high. Asian, 5'11", 166 pounds, 11. What's that? I wonder what BMI that is. Someone should type that into a BMI calculator and find out for me. But basically, if your waist circumference is greater than half your height, then you have too much visceral fat, and that may very well be what's causing this insulin resistance. And so I would encourage you to lose weight, and then reduce foods that cause insulin resistance, primarily saturated fat-laden foods, which impair your body's ability to respond to insulin, and leading to high blood sugars and exaggerated blood sugar spikes, which can cause extra triglycerides in the blood. Okay, Larry says, whole grains give me nasal allergies. I'm skeptical. I've never heard such a thing, but should I avoid them or take antihistamines? No, you shouldn't take antihistamines. You shouldn't be taking antihistamines every day. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that. So I would try diversifying your grains. So maybe you're just have some kind of allergy to wheat. And so maybe switching, trying, where you can try like pseudo grains like buckwheat or quinoa and see if you don't have the same effect. You should not be taking drugs every day just so you can eat a particular food. Wild blueberry. Now that's a name. I love it. Recommendation, 250 milligrams of pollutant-free omega-3, long-chain omega-3s. No. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, perfect. 1. I'm sorry if you're just hearing the audio from this for some reason. That was very useless of me. So when I say 250 milligrams of EPA/DHA, they, to a certain level, interconvert. So DHA retroconverts to EPA. EPA can convert to DHA. So it's the combination for 250. And so just one of those 83 milligrams of EPA and 167 milligrams DHA capsules should set you up. Okay, Jane says, how do I get a gram of protein per pound of body weight? Why? Oh my God, there's a longevity book that tells people to eat more protein. I mean, the thesis of the longevity literature is actually protein restriction, particularly methionine restriction. You do not want to be eating more protein for longevity. Outrageous. No, so you need what does 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight come out to? About 0.4 grams per pound. That's really what you should be shooting for. Not 1 gram per pound, God forbid. Okay. Carolyn Walford says, I know you don't recommend kimchi or sauerkraut ads because of the salt content. What about foods like pickled ginger? Well, it depends where you're pickling. So pickling ginger, you can pickle it. Pickling in vinegar is fine. It's the salt. It's adding salt. So any fermentation that adds salt, with the exception of miso, is not a good idea. Oh, yeah. So you can pickle. Oh, well, but if you get Store-bought pickled ginger or pickled jalapenos typically have a lot of salt added, but it's completely unnecessary. You can pick your own vegetables. They're delicious. And then you get the benefits of vinegar plus the benefits of vegetables. What a great concept. Unfortunately, I got to run off to my next interview. Hope everyone is taking care of themselves, staying cool. And I will talk to you next month. And next year, hopefully, talk to you in person. We're just putting together a speaking tour now for the new book, How Not to Age, which should be out December 5th. All proceeds donated to charity.